Yeah, you're talking about a group that has, I believe it's 207 career starts between them. It's the most starts among any returning line in the nation. Robert
Did I hear
Scott Jr.,
207?
I believe it's up
I
at
never see
207
that number. Good Lord.
total because, we brought in guys like Roddick who had like 2,000 snaps in his career.
You're right.
That's
Got it
great.
right here.
I think second place is like 50 snaps or something like crazy below, but just super, super experienced. And like I said, you bring the left tackle, Robert Scott, back. He's been your starting left tackle since he showed up as a freshman. We just released our depth chart a few days back, and he won that job over Bless Harris. Bless Harris was our starting right tackle going into last year. He ended up getting hurt in the Duquesne game. He didn't even play against LSU. He was out for the season after week 0. He's the backup on both tackle spots. Jeremiah Byers, the number 1 offensive tackle out of the transfer portal, is manning that other right tackle spot. Maury Smith, same thing as Robert Scott. He's been our starter at center past couple years. He comes back. You got Dimitri Emmanuel at left guard. He's a guy that by the end of last year was our best offensive lineman. If you look at the different Pro Football Focus metrics, et cetera, et cetera. And you got Casey Roddick, another big guard on the other side. Our strength is our experience, and I feel like our line is pretty much at their ceiling. You're dealing with kind of like monsters on the other side, guys like Leonard Perkins that are going to be coming off the edge on blitzes. Even though Mason isn't starting, I know they've got big time talent over there on the other side of the defensive line. I like our guys to make the offense move and do what it needs to do to get this win. I don't see either side dominating either side, but I see those tight ends and that offensive line really coming together, adding the 6'7" tight end on one side that ended up getting the start, and Kyle Morlock and Jaheim Bell, the athletic tight end on the other end. It just sets up for a lot of success for Florida State. And this one's going to be a battle. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to give you a crazy take, that one side's going to match the other, but Florida State's coming in there confident and they're ready to execute.
Yeah, let me ask you, both of you, how do you feel about Florida State's, secondary? I was a huge fan of Jamie Robinson. I always cheer for the 3-star recruits, and I just loved watching him play. So now he's not there anymore. Let me know what you guys think about the back end of the D.
I think Shaheem Brown, and that's the guy who made the block on the field goal. He played a lot in that game. A lot of times everybody likes to talk about the 4-2-5 that Florida State runs with Coach Fuller's defense, but we really had 3 safeties on the field a lot last year. So Shaheem's got a ton of reps. Akeem Dent, a lot of reps, but they also moved one of the corners, Kevin Knowles, back there to be able to bring some more reps, some more experience, as well as having a guy that can be able to cover a little bit better. So Jamie Robinson was that guy who was going to fill in and make the tackles. He was really physical, and I think that's where Shaheem Brown's game is more light. Whereas Akeem Dent and Knowles will be guys that will be able to go from sideline to sideline and really play more not free safety, but center field when it comes to that defense. But much is said a lot about the safety position, and I like to laugh and joke about the 2 weaknesses that Alabama and that Georgia both have are in their safety position. But the one thing that they are very, very good at for the most part are their front 7. So you have to be able to get to the safeties in order to be able to exploit that weakness, which Brian Kelly has done a pretty good job of outside of the Georgia game. He did that against Alabama and Alabama as well. But I think that's really where their youth is at. But I think the athleticism and what they're seeing out of Hussey, what they're seeing out of Kirkland, what they're seeing out of they had a junior college safety that came over. They've got more depth than they probably had in the last few years. And they're really excited about what they're bringing in this recruiting class. But I think they're probably a little bit more deep than what people would give credit for. They're just not the well-known part of this defense. It would be the front 7 is what everybody would know more. Really, the front 6, the way we run it, is what more people would know about than that.
Yeah, I just find it's Pat Surtain is the new guy, right?
Absolutely. Conrad Hussey, James Coleman mentioned him, has had an amazing camp. We talked about the different true freshmen or redshirt freshmen making their debuts. That's a name that you might see flash, maybe not right off the bat, getting into the second quarter once they start getting the reserves in there. They talk about him like if there would have been a week 0 game or a Southern Miss or somebody ahead of y'all, that he possibly could have earned that starting spot. Like they're talking about him that high. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see him for. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to speak out of turn. He might be from American heritage too, but I'm not quite sure on that.
And last year, obviously LSU special teams really cost them in major ways. I know Florida State special teams for the most part was very shaky, right?
The kicker position, and that was really the field. We had some field goals. If we score a American football point with our special teams against North Carolina State, we win the game. I think if I remember correctly, we had maybe some misses against Wake Forest. He got a little bit spooked for whatever reason, but I think it was he changed the way that he kicked. He got pretty accurate and pretty got right back on track toward the middle part to the end of the season. So. But as far as our punting game, as far as our return game, it got better last year. It's still not one of our incredible things, except for kickoff return. I believe we had the first kickoff return in quite some time. We had a few this past year, but with Trey Benson returning to open the kickoff against Boston College. So we've got some big guys back there. Also at punt return. Right now, from what I'm understanding, is Keon Coleman will be back there returning kicks, and that's a large individual to go back there and to try to tackle and shore up. But I think with the weapons that this offense has, they're not as concerned about trying to get a bunch of free yardage on special teams as much as they're trying not to lose yardage on special teams. If you don't field a punt and it bounces back another 10 to 15 yards, that will make life a little bit harder on you. And then God knows you guys would know more than anybody about muff punts. A lot of people pick on Yak Johnson and his water gun drill, but you know what we don't do at Florida State? We don't muff punts. So like so maybe I think everybody in the nation should go get a super soaker and start chasing around their players with and squirt water on them so that they can get the concentration.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting when you look at, the third phase of the game. I was listening to I know I butcher his name all the time. John Papuchis, is that how you say his last name?
Yeah.
So he actually got and he's a special teams coach at Florida State. He actually got his start at LSU. I did not know that until last year. And he was talking about how this will be the first time he's going up against a Brian Kelly team that is not coached by Brian Polian. And obviously LSU decided to go separate ways with Brian Polian. It was a little mutual, honestly. And he became an AD at a D3 school. And now LSU is going by a collaborative approach on special teams. And I'm friends with some of the LSU specialists, and I will guarantee you that they are not going to be nearly as bad as they were last year. I was one of the worst special teams units I've ever seen in the history of the SEC. I'm not just talking about LSU. It's all the teams. They were really, really that bad. But they have a good punter, they have a really good deep snapper, and they had a really good kicker. It was just everything, from muffin punts to coverage, holdings, kicking it out of bounds. It was just a mess. So it should be very interesting. And Mark, one guy that I think could have a big game. We're talking about the Louisiana flavor on Florida State's skill position guys. Honestly, it's the Florida guy on LSU's offense that became so key, and that was Mason Taylor. Obviously, the son of Jason, and he went to St. Thomas Aquinas, which obviously everyone watching the show from a Florida perspective knows that high school and all the great pros that they produced. And Mark Mason had one of the best true freshman seasons from a tight end you'll ever see. Now, he's not Kyle Pitts. He's not like just this transcendent tight end prospect, but he is very good. There's really not a whole lot of things he's bad at. And one thing that was very interesting is last year he just kind of had to play a lot as a true freshman by default. They didn't have anyone else really experienced, and he had a difficult time blocking Florida State's very physical front. As the season moved on, his blocking got a lot better. And, people that have played the game will tell you this. Tight end is one of the hardest positions to play as a true freshman because you don't really block a whole lot in high school. So he honestly turned into one of the best tight ends in all of college football. And I think he's going to have a lot better game this year.